We look into formats and what types of formats different consumers are using. And we also do a lot of performance testing to see what types of stories work in those formats. So AR/VR is a really interesting one. And it's one you have to think about carefully in terms of how you use it and what type of story you're telling there, because there's a little bit of friction in terms of actually getting people to engage with it. They have to download something. In some cases, they have to wear a device so that they can fully immerse themselves in the experience.
My name is Amber Harris. I'm going to be your moderator. I'm the executive producer and co-lead of production at Digitas Boston. So why are we here today? We're here to talk about digital content. We're here to talk about how you deliver great results and get quality content. What channels do you find that content on, and how do you engage those audiences? How do you deliver content that doesn't leave you with the fear of missing out? So before we start, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves. Why don't you just go ahead?
My name is Lubo Madolev, and I'm the supervising producer at Mustache, which is a creative content agency based in Brooklyn, New York.
Lovely.
And I'm Joni Tobin. I work here at WGBH on our new Emerging Platforms initiative, which is pretty much an internal incubator to experiment with new content on new platforms.
I'm Bobby Lasivita. I work at Group 9 Media, where I'm our VP of Consumer Research and Ads Measurement. Group 9 is a digital publishing portfolio. We include brands like Now This News, The Dodo, Thrillist, and Seeker.
Hi, thanks guys. Welcome. So I thought it might be fun to start today with a trivia question. Bear with me. Who holds the title for the most retweeted tweet ever? Does anybody know? Anybody have any thoughts? I know, I'm starting out the whole thing with a question. All right, I'll just let you know. So everybody would think it's a celebrity, or at least I thought it was a celebrity, but it's actually not a celebrity. It was a non-celebrity 16-year-old named Chester who went into a Wendy's and asked the question, how many retweets do I need to get a year of free nuggets? And with that, he became the most retweeted tweet, with 3.5 million, in fact. And so why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because that is the lightning in the bottle, right? The secret sauce that we're all looking for and we're all trying to find. And so my first question is, how do you find that creative to engage audiences?
Well, I'd like to focus on the Twitter example. Was it Chester or Carter?
You're right, it was
right?
Carter.
Okay,
Carter.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First rule, don't
correct
the lead. But yeah, so I think it's it's a very interesting example. And here we are talking about chicken nuggets now, so there's that. And
Wendy's.
And Wendy's, exactly.
Like
There's a lot of interesting things to talk about. So on the one hand, it's an example of a brand that's engaging with the audience. So in this case, I think that's the success story from my perspective as a digital content producer. It's seeing a brand that they could not have anticipated the success rate of this tweet by any means, but I think that the fact that they were engaging with this person means that they must have had a social media manager with some autonomy and able to immediately, I think they responded within minutes to that post. And so when you're talking about such a quick response, then they're very well aware of who their audience is and they're engaging. So that's the success story, and
Sure.
Credit to the media manager social media manager that would have done that. And it also spawned a conversation that became it was a hot topic, and it was and it allowed other brands to also participate. And I think that's a healthy conversation to be had, where it's not just about competition is good in this respect. Mm-hmm. So I think from that example, there was the instance of United Airlines, for example, jumping into the conversation and offering a free airline ticket to Carter if he actually achieved his his goal, right? And so they're jumping in from their perspective, but all that does is it raises exposure and it helps drive the conversation that much more. So it's about utilizing the platforms that are at your disposal to have that dialogue, which will help the case.
Yeah, sure. Just another good social media manager who jumped in on that and knew exactly when to get involved.
Exactly.
Well, what do you guys think? What makes good creative? What's that secret sauce?
Still with regard to the tweet?
It doesn't have to be the tweet.
I think the importance of a two-way conversation is something that we should all be thinking about. So that's one of the things we're working on with the Emerging Platforms Initiative. But like you said, the actual social media manager behind that was really sort of ingrained in that platform, watching everything that came through and being able to be really responsive to it because they understood the voice of the platform. Sure. So doing extensive audience development and community outreach, so you know what your audience wants, and that once you actually give it to them, there's support and it will get lift.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll start just kind of from a video perspective because that's how we've worked on our creative best practices. We're very video heavy brands, but platform appropriate storytelling is number one, focusing on mobile, focusing on relevant social conversations and what's going on with that audience and that platform at the time. And if you're going to integrate a brand, do so in a way that is really organic and thoughtful, and that speaks to the brand but also respects your audience's attention, the reason that they engage with you in the first place. So going to the chicken nuggets example, it's not a video per se, but it's a conversation that's definitely a universal topic. Everybody loves chicken nuggets. It's perfectly appropriate for Wendy's as the brand to be a participant and to really interact with the fan. And it was platform appropriate. He was talking about retweets. He was engaging in a social friendly conversation.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things going on there that made it kind of a perfect formula for a viral hit.
Sure, sure. And I guess that also brings up, what do audiences engage with? And I think we've all talked about authenticity and how that plays in. And I guess I'm wondering, how heavily do you think that plays in? And what is authenticity for those audience members?
So I think authenticity is the holy grail, if you will. It's also extremely difficult to achieve, but it is something to keep in mind, and it's key. Being authentic means being very aware of who you're speaking to, the platforms are the communities, is how I view it, and it consists of a certain group of people. And there's, for example, if we're talking about Instagram, we're talking more about millennial creators, or if you're talking about TikTok nowadays, it's Gen Z, a bit younger skewing. So that in itself is the community. You need to be aware of who you're speaking to and be authentic in that regard. And so you need to approach your creative process with that in mind. And then in addition to that, I think to speak about engagement, telling stories is what people are there to watch. Like, that's why we're on social media. That's why we're in the digital space so much. So it all starts with, I would say, don't focus so much on the service or the brand or the product that you're providing, but rather tell an interesting and engaging story, and that brand or message or whatever it may be will be weaved into that presence in a positive way. So really the engagement comes from that true story and coming at it from a creative forward perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
I think also adding value, like you can be authentic, but like if you're just going out there and saying like, hey, not actually providing value to that community and the platform that you're on, people are they're still either not going to listen or they're going to call you out. So I think making sure that you're contributing when you do that.
Right, something that speaks to the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just going off of that, something that we've been focusing on a lot with clients is brand perception. So not just simple kind of brand lift metrics like market awareness or purchase intent or positive favorability, but understanding the thoughts and the user value associations that really drive those feelings and sentiments. Because if you're a brand or an advertiser, you certainly, as a business, have things to offer people and things to not just contribute to conversations, but really elevate them. But understanding what people actually think of what you offer and knowing exactly what they know about your business, I think, is really important for brands to be able to come in with something that's really relevant and that relates to the audience.
Sure, yeah, completely agree. So I think this is a good point to show off some of our work. We all brought something, like show and tell. Let's start with Lubo's work. I think we're not going to give it any lead up. We're just going to
go right into it and
watch
see what
it, and then we
happens.
can talk about it after.
I'm Jan Janssen, motivational sleeper. And this is Nectar. What's up, bedheads? What time is it? You're trying to go places in life. But what about your favorite place? Sleep.
When I got my 365-night trial from Nectar, I slept for a whole year.
It's a great day to be asleep. And what do we need?
With Nectar's Forever warranty, I went from loser to snoozer.
With free shipping and free returns from Nectar, I'm a bedhead now.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Recently, I've been tossing and turning. Am I a bad sleeper?
There are no bad sleepers. There are only bad mattresses. I want you to sleep your truth.
No, I'm not ready. I can't. I'm not. No, that's not.
Listen to your heart. Trust me. Trust Nectar. This is the world's quietest revolution. This is your moment, and this is your mattress.
All right. That's a great piece. Got a lot of laughs.
Silly piece.
Yeah, it's totally silly. I think it actually speaks exactly to what we were just talking about, which is first entertainment, second some relevance to the brand. So, you know, I guess I have a lot of questions about it, but let's start with how did you get there? Obviously there's some really good creative behind it. Did the brand come to you and ask for a specific engagement or metrics, that results that they wanted out of it, or how did that come about?
Very good question. I just want to say it took courage to decide to show this one, because you never know how it's going to be received, but it seems positive for the most
Yes,
part.
yeah.
It's definitely silly. We had a lot of fun making it. It was also extremely difficult to make. So it was kind of a challenge that we set ourselves. There was a lot of things to keep in mind. But to answer your question, you know, they're a direct-to-consumer brand. It falls under kind of a brand disruptor, if you will, similar to perhaps if you've heard, you know, Casper or Purple mattresses. They're not the traditional brand. So, with that said, it was a very refreshing dialogue and conversation. The request was for something unique that pushes the boundaries a little bit. And when we hear that as creators, it's like that's what you want to hear, right? Because when you have a lot of like limitations or too much data to focus on, it can feel a little bit overwhelming or whatnot. But here they wanted to push the boundaries. So we took a little bit of a reverse approach in the sense that it was a creative first, meaning that we developed the concept, we created the character Jan Janssen, the one and only. I wouldn't be surprised if there's people sleeping now, because hopefully that worked. But hey, so yeah, Jan Janssen, and then everything else flows from there. So then we have social media experts and strategists that defined the platforms where it would live in relation to the creative. So their work, it's not work that I do personally, but you know, it is. It's a deep dive into other similar brands or other similar or just spaces where similar content might live, to see what's been playing, what people are engaging with, what people are interested in, and in response to that, we then define our distribution model. So it's lead with the creative and then define the distribution.
Sure, makes sense. Where did it actually end up living? Do you remember?
So yeah, so this was primarily YouTube. You know, we created a landing site for this. So it's from, you know, if you were to go to Nectar, it has its own page, which then also leads to the videos. It played on. There's Instagram assets and boomer, like we did GIFs, videos, and stills for it. So it was a lot more than just the piece that we saw here. I think all in all, it was about 35 or 36 total deliverables.
Wow, okay, yeah, that's pretty normal for us these days, at least at Digitas. Do you guys also find, do you have platforms that you think work better than others? I mean, he mentioned a lot. Are those all familiar to you? Or those one places where you see a lot of content? Do you think any of them are better or more engaging to audiences than others, or they're just all different? I think there are like 8 questions in there, so pick one.
I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to accomplish. So, like you said, you look at the creative and then figure out the platform. I think we're trying to do a little bit of both in the work that we're doing. So we have creative, but we're also trying to figure out what works on each platform. So it really depends. If you're interested in that sort of live real-time engagement, which is great. But I think they're all great.
Right.
Maybe
I think we're probably all using them, at least most of them.
Yeah, I mean, Lua, it sounds like you were really smart in terms of how you contextualize this asset for a lot of different environments. So I think it kind of depends on the story you're trying to tell as far as what's going to be best. So in this case, we have a creative that's really, really dialogue heavy, where the dialogue is an important narrative driver. It's high production value. It belongs on a big screen where people can listen. But if you want to create other assets that tell the story and promote it further, you need to think about audience context and what they expect out of and how they use each of those platforms. So I think you mentioned boomerangs for Instagram. Any sort of shorter contextualized video would work great in a feed-based environment like in Instagram or in Facebook.
And yeah, thank you for reminding me. So that's a really good point. And so it also translates to the production approach taken in when creating something like this. So there are many different aspect ratios to keep in mind nowadays. And I know that we hate talking about vertical, but it simply is part of the vocabulary and dialogue nowadays, if not sometimes more so than horizontal. So. We take a very modular approach to the production of something like this, and there's certain pieces from here that you don't even see in the hero spot, if you will, but rather it's still shot in the same day, same space, with the same camera, but within the scripting and the shoot schedule, it's meant exclusively for one platform, not for all of them. And so you'll have just one portion of it which is meant to be. So for example, those the bedheads that are talking like testimonials, that really easily translates to like a 6-second IG story or video there.
Yeah. I think for me personally, that happens a lot where we're shooting one type of creative, but we end up needing to put it on multiple platforms and in different aspect ratios, and some with sound and some with not. And so it presents a very difficult problem. And of course, we all have tightening budgets, so trying to figure out how to weigh those options. Is it better to have content that fits all platforms as best as it can because it fits into a smaller budget, or is it better to try and find a way to use that small budget to cut multiple different types of creative to fit more accurately into those different platforms and different aspect ratios? Do you guys feel the same way? I mean, I think it's kind of a running theme in the industry these days.
Definitely.
But, yeah.
It's universal. You kind of said it all. I don't know exactly how much I could add, but that's exactly the space we live in today. And it's not also just budgets, but things need to turn around so quickly too. So time is a really big factor to it as well. And our production windows are shorter and shorter, especially in reference to this piece. Like I mentioned, it involved strategists and our social media team really kind of going through a research phase and process to help define what would play best and how it would play best. So all of that is essential and it helps in the end, but it eats away at the overall timeline that you're dealing with. So.
And how do you evaluate where the return on investment drops off in terms of how much time you're spending making those 36 assets?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a good answer to that question. I think that I don't think it's a very good idea to be creating so many assets in one specific creative under one budget. I think it always dilutes the creative, but it's a necessity, and I think there are ways to make smart decisions about how you use that money. But of course, the return on investment will not be as great, I think. Actually, I think we can show another piece of work. So this is my piece. It's some work that is actually a larger campaign that we did for the JFK Library and Museum. And I think it's a really good example of kind of some of the stuff that we're talking about, where we have an overarching creative that then we had to, that we wanted to put into a lot of different platforms and really engage a younger audience, which will be seen in more live streams or AR, VR, that kind of content. So I thought that this was a pretty successful way that we approached it. So let's watch it.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Apollo 11, this is Houston. Radio check, over. Altitude, velocity, light. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Today marks 50 years since the greatest technological achievement in human history.
The JFK Library used 21st century technology to take people back to that amazing launch without leaving Dorchester.
You can see the first ever full-scale AR simulation of the Saturn V rocket.
The entire event live streamed to millions.
T-minus 40 seconds before the launch. Make sure your phones are ready.
3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
There it goes. The Saturn V rocket.
That goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. That challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
I think it's wonderful.
Our very own Michael Collins, that was really exciting to get to meet him and talk with him. So the reason I wanted to show this piece was there were a lot of challenges. We had a tighter timeline than, of course, we were all expecting, as usual. But more importantly, I think there were a lot of pieces of this that were my first time working with. Admitted, I probably shouldn't admit that, but. And so I thought it was really important for me to find the right partners and lean into their expertise, but also you have to find the right partners. You have to be able to believe in their expertise. So that was really important for me in this. I had to find a company that would do a full-scale rocket in AR at the library, an app, as well as live streaming at the library for the rocket launch. And it was a very daunting task. So in any case, I thought it was important to talk a little bit about how we find our partners. And, I think we all have a little bit of a different perspective here. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that from you guys.
Why don't maybe somebody else can start on this one? No, it's a fantastic piece, but I feel like I keep leading the conversation, perhaps steering it a certain way.
This is a little bit of a different answer because my team is 2 and it's 3 people, but 2.5 people making, and we don't really have a budget to find production-specific partners outside of WGBH. So we were really lucky that GBH has an amazing internal production team for the project that I'll show after this. But we try to be really flexible in terms of like how we're making, and rather than being like super like experts on one platform, we're really trying to figure out formats. So interactive live streaming is something that's really popular in Twitch right now, but YouTube gaming is coming right behind it, and Facebook gaming way behind that. But it's it's coming. So platforms might die and go away, but the formats that they're inventing are sticking around. So while we might not be a big team and have the ability to kind of like bring in bigger partners, we're really lucky we have in-house resources. But at the same time, all of those resources mean nothing if we are really focusing just on Facebook Watch or products that don't necessarily last. So we look at formats like tap-through storytelling, interactive live streaming, instead of actual platform specific. So it's not, sorry, it's a little bit of a sideways answer.
I mean, I think that brings up a good point. Maybe it's not necessarily just partners, but also being comfortable in the unknown and working through trying to figure out new platforms, because as you just said, there will always be something new and next. Just like, what's the newest is TikTok, I suppose. So that's important to always be able to do that. So I think that's fair.
So my team doesn't work directly on production elements or content creation. We more advise it. We do research and concept testing, and we look into formats and what types of formats different consumers are using. And we also do a lot of performance testing to see what types of stories work in those formats. So AR/VR is a really interesting one. And it's one you have to think about carefully in terms of how you use it and what type of story you're telling there, because there's a little bit of friction in terms of actually getting people to engage with it. They have to download something. In some cases, they have to wear a device so that they can fully immerse themselves in the experience. But what a great piece of work. I mean, it's celebratory, it's commemorative, it's the type of story that would work really well in one of those more immersive and meaningful formats. And since Apollo 11 was a technological achievement, it's already kind of right there in the conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'll take that.
Totally agree. It is a great piece, and kind of basically on the from my perspective, we are on the ground. So like we at Mustache have a production team, post-production team, and a creative team. So we are would be like the creators, but keeping in mind how things are changing so often and how there are so many different, whether it's technologies or platforms or formats to keep in mind, we find it crucial, and being flexible and able to evolve and adapt quickly is paramount. So oftentimes we'll work with, what we try to do is basically build teams around expertise or a visionary, if you will, in the space. So, for example, sometimes we'll collaborate. We'll purposefully use a bit of a smaller approach. We did some work for Bowery farming, for example, and we hired pretty much just like a group of 3 people that were a mix of many different things. So there's a lot of slashes in titles nowadays. It's both a producer, a photographer, a food stylist, and a blogger, And so that person can offer a lot from a production value standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's these days. You're right. There, people there have many more than just one titles, or at least they need to in order to be able to adapt in this world that we're currently in.
For individuals.
Yes.
But
yes.
Of course, there's a place for the I'm sure to work on something so fantastic, you would have had to have a partner that has incredible skills in the AR space and experience. So testament to them, to those who can focus on just that and kind of expand it that much further.
Yes. And actually, surprisingly, it was one company that, of course, they have a lot of different departments and areas that they work in and expertise, but they did our AR as well as the commercial that we did, and they did the app. So they were all over the place there. But I think it is also important they weren't a live streaming company, and they were still a partner in talking to me about who they would suggest and how to be involved. And so I think for that reason, it is important that all, no matter what part of the industry you're in, that you have your finger on a little bit of all of that, a jack of all trades at a minimal level. Would you guys agree? I mean, I think that's important. I think we have to all try and be able to understand a little bit of AR and app development and results and engagement statistics, all of it down the line. So let's watch Joni's piece. Do you want to give a little lead up, or do you want to just watch it?
I think we can. I'll give a little bit of a lead up.
Okay.
It's kind of intense. So here at GBH on the Emerging Platforms team, we recently created a show called Escape Lab, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a clip from it. It was an interactive, live-streamed, space-themed escape game show. And we built an escape room. If you guys are not familiar with escape rooms, it's where you get locked in a room and you have to solve puzzles in order to find your way out. And so we decided this is a really fun concept for a show. So we built a space station escape room in our studio right over here. And then we had some Twitch streamers and YouTube influencers come and try to get out. So along the way, we also interviewed experts. You know, it was a space station. We wanted to make sure it was actually accurate. So we talked to astronauts, so we talked to people at NASA, and we streamed all of that from the very beginning. And we started with, our team is sort of, like I said, an incubator. So we started with audience 0, and we're really pleased that by the time the actual game came around, that we had built a really good following. So I'll leave it at that and let you guys see it for yourselves.
Communications mechanical failure. Communications mechanical failure. Launch ignition sequence successful.
We have, to my right-hand side, Team Above. What about on my left side? We got Team Beyond here. These are 3 astronauts on a space station orbiting Mars. It is your job to do 2 experiments to determine whether or not humans can survive there. Obtain the data and results, get back to Earth safely. Get in that chat and get involved.
Oh wait, this goes here.
There's a key somewhere in this room, and we're gonna need your help finding it, Enid. Please click somewhere on the screen, wherever you think that key may be. Enid suggests that you can find the key at the top of the hatch.
Now, we have to go. You guys get into the escape pod. Yes, we're saved. Yes.
Star Tracker navigation system is damaged, and we're gonna have to navigate by constellation. Sit tight while I ask Enid for some help. Okay, astronauts, it looks like the constellations you guys need are Cetus and Cepheus.
977.
Woo! We're going back to Earth.
The winning team is Team Beyond. We are here at WGBH in Boston, and this is Escape Lab.
Awesome. That looked like a lot of fun.
It was so much fun.
I love escape stuff, so I'm not very good at it.
Our partner, Trapology, who designed and built the room for us, they have this shameless plug, but they have a really great escape game company downtown. And we, for research, of course, went twice and to play, and we didn't get out either time. So.
Sure, for research.
It's the best kind of research.
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of fun researching.
So all of that was based within Twitch, is that right?
Yeah. So the idea was that the audience was supposed to help them get out, and
And how did you think that went well? Was that a good platform for it? I mean, I think for me, it seems like that's going to be the future of a lot of branding and places to really find audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for STEM content, you know, this obviously, like we were talking about earlier, this is an entertainment first show, but we wanted to sort of underpin a lot of it with educational principles. And so it was a perfect environment for that, because the community there is, especially the community that's interested in space and science, is really interested in being there for education and to learn things. And I'm sure you found that too, sort of overlapping on the Twitch space community. We really looked into that because we were sort of tying the theme of the show to the PBS Summer of Space. We ended up missing it by a couple weeks, but you know, that happens. So, but it was perfect because we looked into this space community, and on Twitch, the space community is super positive and constructive. And we were talking about this before we came in, but like we didn't have any trolls, you know, and it was pretty amazing. So I thought it was a perfect platform for this type of content. You know, I'm not sure. I think they are trying to expand into other types of content. They've got food shows, you know, talk shows, and even dramas. So I think it is a great place for additional content, but I can't really speak beyond the science and space.
Yeah. Well, I can't either, but I will say I completely agree. Twitch was a great spot for us for our moon launch, or our Apollo rocket launch, I should say. And we were really surprised by the high engagement and the really tight-knit community, which I think is something that you do find very often on Twitch channels. I know that they started in gaming, but they're really trying to break out of that, and science seems to be something that people are really engaging with. And we also didn't have any problems with any trolls, and we were very surprised by that. We were ready for that.
Yeah, we were ready.
Yeah.
We got there, but I'm just very glad it didn't happen.
Have you guys, either of you two, worked within live streaming, or is that?
So we didn't do live streaming, but we did collaborate with Twitch recently. But it was a branded spot, but you know, aired towards the gaming community more. So it was we used that as a platform more for what audience we wanted to grab. Sure. But I haven't yet delved into the live streaming component of it. But it is such a unique space for sure, and kind of can't wait to you know, see how that develops. I mean, we speak about authenticity and engagement, and it's just almost embedded within that platform. It doesn't matter what you're doing; it's already there. There's that chat, and then I had I think that key finding thing was such an interesting part of it, which is really like it's a long-term kind of commitment for the audience. So it's a very interesting piece.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the reasons why Twitch is right now has so much more opportunities so many more opportunities than YouTube and Facebook, because they have the ability to customize the experience through these interactive extensions. So I'm sure the other platforms will get there, but right now Twitch is pretty great for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story for Twitch, right? It's a platform that's based on people sharing the experience of playing games together. So you found a really relevant game. Escape the Room is really popular in the social scenes in a lot of big cities and other areas. And you found people who are known to drive real engagement with users and audiences around how they play games, and you found a way to integrate all of them.
Yeah, I think the real key for Twitch is their audience base. They're avid fans and very tight, and as you said, authenticity is very true to them. It's very close to them. They want to be engaged in topics that they're interested in, and they can really control it, which makes them much more avid fans, for sure.
One of our main takeaways, I think, from this is that producing for chat, you know, that chat feed is just as important as producing for the sort of video experience. And I didn't, you know, this is my first time on a Twitch project too, I will really admit. But so that was a revelation to me, and it was a really actually exciting one, because, you know, as we were sitting in the control room reading the chat feed and watching, it was kind of magic. You know, people were you could see in real time how people were receiving the content that you're making, which is kind of rare, and so it was a fun experience.
Yeah, that is true.
May I ask a question? Is that
No, please feel free.
But so it was 2 teams in that spot, and so was the winner based. So would you say that also the chat communities were pinned against each other as well in that respect? Or?
Well, chat was really torn because so we had YouTube family, they're influencers who really on YouTube who have a bit of a younger audience, and they're really into kind of like playing games, and they've done a couple of escape room videos. So we brought them in, and then we were able to work with 2 Twitch streamers, and so the majority of the audience came from those Twitch streamers, but they're the same audience, so they didn't want to pick between Das, who's one, who actually also worked on Moonshot, and EJ. They were like, what do? We don't want to, So they had a hard time rooting for one team over the other, and it was time based. They didn't have to actually vote on the team.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I feel like a lot. The people that are on Twitch all the time, they're very, they're kind of like Viners in the fact that you can rely on them as social influencers to really help you understand how to engage with those platforms. I relied on them a lot when we were doing the live streaming and how to moderate and what would grab what their audiences wanted to hear. So I thought that was also a really interesting part of that platform.
Yeah, that was hugely helpful. I mean, they were like every Twitch streamer we talked to, and we had 2 in the show, but we consulted with like 8, and they were all in the Twitch space community, and they were so incredibly helpful. Like I don't think we could have done it without them. So.
Yeah, great. I don't know how we're running on time, but I think we're doing okay, right? Okay, so I don't know, but I'm going to keep going. So we have another piece of content. This one is really fun, which is why I left it for last. It's just lighthearted. So do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to just show it, Bobby?
No introduction necessary.
Okay. All right. We can just go ahead and show Bobby's piece. Who doesn't like animals, right? Okay, so why did you share this piece with us today, besides the fact that it's got adorable dogs in it?
So as if we need a reason to show corgi parties, I'll try to give a couple. So this was a piece of content that we created with Samsung last year around the launch of the Galaxy S9 phone. They really wanted to promote the super slow motion camera function. So we generally advise that longer watch times, more meaningful attention are the key to real brand results and resonating with users. But if you use really effective storytelling mechanisms, if you do platform appropriate content, and if your messaging is extremely efficient, you can achieve a lot of brand results in a very short amount of time with meaningful audience attention. So this was designed for feed environments. We distributed it to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's actually sound agnostic, so that's the first time I've watched it with the sound on. We optimized for mobile, and it was based on a few key insights. One, our brand partner wanted to focus on this super slow motion video, so we found a creative idea that really was almost a product demonstration, put it right there into a relevant conversation for the advertiser. We also knew that people love animal content in their news feeds. It brightens up their day, it makes them happy. And we also knew that pet parents love to take pictures and videos of their pets. And when smartphone shoppers are shopping for a smartphone, the camera features are one of the most important purchasing decisions, because technology's gotten to a place where phones are performing at a really high level. So those camera updates are a really important decision factor when users are actually going to buy.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those things as a phone user and animal lover. So how did it do? Do you know those results, or are you on that end of things?
Yeah, so we got a lot of meaningful engagement, good watch time, social interactions. So we know that people were welcoming it into their news feeds. It was platform appropriate. And we also ran a brand lift research against it. So we saw that message association with that super slow-mo function showed a big lift against our audiences. We promoted the feature effectively and the messaging worked. And we also drove purchase intent.
Well, that's great to hear. Sometimes I wonder if, I love great content, but is it really, are people identifying that with the brand, or are they just watching that piece of very engaging content and you don't get that connection so easily, especially when we're dealing with short, 6-second videos on, Snapchat. What do you guys think? I mean, I have my own opinions, but.
I think that it is important to have that good creative, and I don't see it so much as a deterring factor. I think it does help. Nowadays there's just a lot out there. I think that is one of the biggest challenges, and brands aren't necessarily just competing with other brands; they're also competing with users, right? And
right.
Cat videos, dog videos. I mean, I'm a sucker for dogs, so. But yes, it's definitely difficult, to break in from that respect as well. But having that, creating ancillary content, as we like to call it, whether it's shorter pieces, 6 seconds, regardless of duration, it helps. Spread that message and ideally lead to whether it's the brand page or to the hero spot, if you will. So having access to more, I think, is a powerful tool.
Sure. Yeah. Agreed. So, TikTok or no TikTok? I have my feel. I don't use it. I don't think I'm the right audience member for that, but I'm curious. It seems to be something that's really interesting to people right now. Vine was that. I feel like TikTok is becoming that. It's got that secret sauce that makes people keep scrolling. And it's innocent. It's entertaining. Do you guys
love
watch?
TikTok. Yeah. And it's such a rabbit hole. You can spend an hour sitting at your desk just going through it, or at night when you're like, oh, I'm gonna set my alarm, and I'm like, no, I'll just check TikTok. Like an hour later, you're still not sleeping. It's so good.
Yeah.
And we're really interested in it because of the younger audience, obviously. But I think it's really cool to me personally because it's sort of the sweet spot between celebrating being yourself and in everyone's weirdness, while also kind of fitting into this larger whole, which is something that young people obviously always are trying to figure out for themselves. And so by participating in these challenges and creating this thing that is mirrors the one that was created before it, they're sort of participating and figuring out how they fit into a larger. I don't know, maybe it's too philosophical, but I love that idea about it and many other things.
Yeah.
I love the creative tactics that people are using in TikTok. I think people are getting really creative with how they edit their videos, how they shoot them, using camera tricks and things like that. So I'm a relatively new user in the platform, but I've really enjoyed a lot of the content that I've seen. I'm really excited for the content to diversify a little bit more as the audience evolves and as the platform kind of matures, because we talked about vertical video a moment ago, and I think it was a big conversation about 5-6 years ago, right when Snapchat was really taking off, and then it kind of has quieted down a little bit because we've gotten used to and normalized how much we use smartphones in society. But there have been new vertical formats still emerging, IGTV, TikTok now. So I think there's going to be a lot of new creative elements coming into play in the next couple of years.
What's amazing with TikTok too is you'll find yourself in across the world, or you'll be in Latin America in one video, and then the next video you're in LA or something. There's just creators everywhere. I think it speaks to how the people, the audience is a very creative audience. It's not right now. Yes, it's experimental stages, and it is more youthful, but it's clearly entertaining to a lot of us. So there's a lot of potential there, and I think at this stage, it's hard to tell exactly where it's going to go. But because there's just not enough, I think, information on it or how brands can really interact with it. But I mean, just recently I watched what was it, Chipotle, and they did some hilarious things, and they were using memes from, like really popular memes of a woman singing about guacamole, and or like overlaying other over songs over a video featuring chips laid out on a table, and it's like the audience is chanting and speaking. It's just so you can be very creative with it. Clearly, there's a lot of potential, and it just speaks again. I think the main thing about TikTok is that it shows the shift in how the audience is. It's kind of remix culture, and it's all about creation, and it's about self-expression. So realizing that, it's brands can have conversations with other creators, not just speak to them, but speak kind of. That's essentially what the community is. It's being part of the community as being a creator within it.
Sure, yeah, user-based content, and then being able to turn that into branded user-based content. And I think that's always been the thing that's really gotten brands good recognition in social media platforms, is being able to harness that specific, how do I get in touch with those users and use them to create that content for me in a way that works on that medium.
And TikTok isn't the only. Obviously, I mean, it's just like so tailored to it, but it isn't the only one. I think you mentioned user-generated content. That's also a really interesting space, and you can create so much with it. Recently, I mean, unfortunately, I didn't show it here, so it's hard to speak to it from a visual perspective. But we created user-generated videos for Queen. And so we basically created a page and asked for submissions from people around the world to sing the song that was choreographed by a professional choreographer, and then spliced all that work together. And and then and of course that was relevant because of Bohemian Rhapsody and all and its great success and the success there. But just user-generated things are they're driving forces.
Yeah. What brand was that for?
It was in partnership with YouTube, and it was for Queen. So it wasn't really part of it wasn't for a brand. It was really just pushing, trying to, what we noticed essentially, or what the challenge was set was that older Queen videos had so many views, but newer video didn't really. Or just newer songs either. So it was adopting the old, but in a new way, but also being collaborative and inclusive in the approach. So it was it was also inspiring too, because you could see so many people so passionately involved with the project. So it was also a testament to the work that you're creating when you see these people that care so much about what they're doing.
Sure. I think there are probably a lot of insights there, which is probably, we could talk about insights and how you use insights for digital media, but we don't have enough time for that. So we have a little bit of extra time, so we can do a little Q&A.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm a boomer. I'm a proud boomer. So maybe my questions are naive, but Bobby, I was going to ask you this question because you're involved in research and measurement. And you said something very interesting, Hugo, when you said, they're not competing with other brands, they're competing with other users. And so my question to you is, how successfully are companies, brands being able to measure that more users result in more purchases? So that's my question.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a couple of questions in there, one of which is kind of how brands stand out in social and get noticed when there's a lot of noise from other users and other interactions and content going on in those social environments. But also, it sounds like there was a question around is more better, is reaching more people better for advertising? Is that?
Or is the number of followers, per se, or users, is that resulting in purchasing? Is that resulting in increased income for those brands? And can you measure it?
Absolutely. So it's a good question. General rule of thumb, the more people who see something and the longer they watch for, the more quality attention you get out of it. if there's a brand integrated or involved in that piece of content, you should theoretically see more lift in terms of offline sales or conversion ROI. But creative matters. You have to have your message out there. You have to be able to capture attention meaningfully early on in the feeds, especially because they are kind of competitive environments. There's a lot going on in social and a lot of distractions. So theoretically, yes, reaching more people will drive better business results, but your creative has to win as well.
Okay, the theoretically thing doesn't convince me though.
No, fair enough. Reaching more people does drive potential for more business if your creative works and if it inspires those people to go and seek out your brand, and if the messaging is there so that they see the value that you can offer them.
I think also brands would love to believe that that's true, even no matter what they say.
Totally.
Yes, the woman was. Oh,
Which
sure.
is, it seems like this Carter kid was very well researched. And he got nuggets for life. Did Wendy's see a spike in chicken nuggets now?
I don't know if Wendy's did. I know that they got a great deal of good publicity out of it. They gave $100 million to a nonprofit to acknowledge all of the attention that they were getting. So I think they got a lot of goodwill and a good branding out of it.
But it is also similar to another recent event, the fried chicken sandwich. I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but it was between Chick-fil-A and Popeyes? Popeyes, right? Thank you. And I don't have the hard data behind me, but I'm pretty sure that led to incredible sales, not to mention that people were even selling it outside the store and things like that. So I mean, it just leads to so it's not just the sales that I think the real value to those brands and to others that participated in the conversation was exposure and having that dialogue and being able to speak to it and get more exposure from that sense rather than the physical sales of the sandwiches, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
So first of all, thanks. This was really helpful. For those of us here in the audience who might be producers, and maybe some of us have an idea that would be a really good branded content possible project, and we have the crew that could make it happen, but we don't have the platform or the advertiser. Do you want to hear from us, and what do you look for producers like us bring to your table?
So, sure, I'm always happy to listen. I think, no, but I think the thing is, our ideas can come from anywhere. And I'm always open to them for sure. I think my hesitation is in that I have a core creative team that works within my agency that I'm beholden to, and that's who we produce our stuff within the agency. That said, I know we probably all do our own separate projects on our own. I don't know, does anybody else have anything to add there?
Well, I think it's not so much about so we have our core producers and creative teams, but what I would like to perhaps spin the question a little bit and talk about accessibility. And we're talking about platforms on this stage, right? We're talking about FOMO, and we're talking about gear, and and phones, as much as I hate to say it, are such powerful tools as well. We don't lean on them so heavily when we're creating this work, but the fact of the matter is it is, and we are a community of creators. So anyone with ideas or anyone that has the means to do anything should do it, right? That is what makes this space so interesting, is that it is accessible.
Yeah, I would also add that you can always make the content first and then sell it later if it's important or engaging or has a tie to some kind of branding. You'll find somebody that wants to pick it up. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.